Yeah, let's go here with Angel Barragon. He says, I see a return of pro basketball to San Diego. Only more likely it'll end up being a G League team.
Well, that's a really interesting take, Angel, because I've always thought about that. I mean, that the NBA G League and all the teams now this coming year will have a true G League team. Why would San Diego, even if it's at the Pechanga Arena, why would they not have an NBA team? We've had semi-pro teams that kind of filtered in here and were a fiasco and didn't last very long. But Portland Trailblazers, you have your NBA G League team. Put it in San Diego. I think you draw. You get prospects. It's not going to be ridiculous prices. So, yeah, why it hasn't happened already is a little bit surprising to me. But if there is a new arena and there is no NBA team available, and I don't think there would be, why not a G League team? Because that's decent quality basketball.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Santa Cruz has a G League team.
Yeah.
Ontario, California has a G League team. I mean, why not San Diego?
Okay, I agree with you. Next question.
Okay. And this is from Kalani Revier. He says, all this promise and the Padres are failing so badly.
Underachievers. I'm surprised nobody's blown their lid yet. Now, maybe, I don't know, maybe the media in this town doesn't have the brass to stand up and criticize what the hell's on the field and what's going on in the dugout and what the roster looks like in the clubhouse. Somebody needs to take this stance aside from me. I mean, I'd be barking about the disappointment instead of kumbaya, everything's beautiful. Well, it's not. But I grant you, there's still plenty of time for this thing to come together, but it hasn't come together at this point in time with veteran established guys. It's not like we got some guy, John, from AAA, we're hoping is going to be a 300 hitter. We got all these proven commodities that have done this in the past, and collectively, they're not doing it now. I don't know. Do you think the media has lost its brass to stand up and be critical of either, not so much Seidler, because he's bankrolled this, but Preller or Melvin or the players?
Well, I mean, you've been critical of the team, but you haven't been over the top slamming them on the head. I mean, we've seen a little bit of that from some of the other guys in sports talk here in San Diego. But in the end, this just it's not going to make a difference to what actually happens between the lines. And Melvin has got to get, we talk about Suarez, he comes back, that bullpen gets replenished. And then I just got to hope the players, the hitting regresses to the mean. And if they do that, then they're going to be in good shape. But geez, we've been waiting for so long.
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting here now, it's June. So like I say, the magic number is 10. If you get more than 10 games behind in the pennant race, it's hard to make that up, and it's hard to leapfrog a whole bunch of the guys that are in front of you. And as I said at the start of this bonus podcast, there's 8 teams in front of them fighting for 3 wild card spots. That's a lot of teams you have to beat. And it's not like these other guys are all going to go on 12-game losing streaks.
But I think they're only about 3.5 games out of the last wild card spot. So the gap to make up is not much. But when you have to leapfrog, it gets hard.
On we go. Next question.
On we go. So this is from Manny N. He says, so are the rumors of the Pac-12 media deal being complete by this month a good thing for the survival of the conference?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I was told that they are negotiating within this last week what they call the grant of deed, which is part of the TV media contracts. And the grant of deed is you're at Oregon State or you're at Oregon or any of the other members, you will agree to whatever the terms are of the new media deal. And you will not hit any escape button to leave. And once they get that grant of deed from all these schools that will be left behind, then they'll go forward, they'll sign whatever the deal is. And I don't know if the deal is going to mean $37 million per school per year or $41 million, but they're hopeful that they're going to be able to get to that mystical number. And I think once they get to that mystical number, then I think there'll be some expansion bids turned out. I don't know where the Big 12 is. They're out there in the hinterlands talking to a lot of people, whether it was San Diego State. I was told that the Big 12 was on the campus at the University of Memphis last week, and suddenly they're looking in different places for a member. And that makes sense because Memphis and Cincinnati and Houston, there's a southern quadrant to the Big 12. That kind of makes sense. So it may well be they're not looking at the West Coast very much now because they're looking at somebody else. But once the grant of deed takes place, then I think this contract, and I do think it'll come in the next 2 weeks, and then we'll see where it goes from that point forward.
Isn't it amazing the difference in money between the Power Fives and everyone else? Because 40 million a year that these universities are getting. I mean, what do the Aztecs get now from the Mountain West? Three. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, the difference. So one way or the other, we're hopeful. Obviously, the Aztecs are going to get an invitation, but I think a lot of us are still skeptical about the long-term future of the Pac-12. Is it going to dissolve? Is it a stable conference?
No, the president of the University of Arizona said last Friday that he believes every member is committed to stay. So that means those 10 that will be left after the Bruins and Trojans vacate will sign the grant of deed, and that'll be the foundation of the conference.
Okay.
And then you go from there. Whether they go from 10 to 11 or 10 to 12, I don't know. But they got to get the media deal done, and the grant of deed is part of the media deal to get John Riley to commit to stay in the Pac-12.
I do have one request. I like to see all of these conferences drop the number on the end of their name, because the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, that none of them match up to that number. So hopefully that'll change too.
On we go. More questions here on our Monday bonus podcast.
From Emmanuel Nahara, he says, are the Diamondbacks overachieving, or is the rest of the NFL West underachieving?
Well, Dodgers have been wrecked by injuries to their staff. We laughed about when they went to the Grapefruit Circuit in the Cactus League, the number of arms they had. Virtually all their kids have been hurt. Those kid pitchers that we were talking about back in March and April have all been dinged up. And then obviously what happened with Dustin May and the setback with Buehler, and then what happened to Urias. So, I mean, the injuries have really sidetracked the Dodgers. In all honesty, the Padres have just grossly underachieved, but there's still plenty of time for those guys to hit back to the norm and be who they were. I don't understand the Giants. I mean, that's a patchwork quilt roster. Are you kidding me? And the Dodgers are struggling, and the Giants are in freaking third place, and the Padres are fourth. And Colorado's been destroyed by injuries. I felt bad. I looked at that batting order Bud Black put on the field when the Rockies played the Padres. It was like it was the Albuquerque Isotopes batting order. He just lost Charlie Blackmon for 6 weeks, fractured hand. He lost Chris Bryant, who's had a third different injury this season. His all-star young infield, Brendan Rodgers, got hurt very early, has never returned. His ace of his pitching staff, Herman Marquez, elbow surgery. It just goes on and on and on up at Coors Field. So the Rockies have just been decimated. Well,
then that other guy, CJ Cron, that big first baseman, where's he? He must be hurt too.
Yeah, he's got a back issue. He's on the IL. So, I mean, look at all those guys that are on the injured list. Look at who he's putting out on the field. How are you supposed to compete with that? And yet, that's what was so galling about the Sunday loss to the Padres. They lost to an Albuquerque AAA roster.
Yeah, with a team with a $253 million payroll. You feel bad for Bud Black because he's a good guy, and he's just, kind of carrying around, a kind of a damaged bag of goods.
On we go. More questions. Bonus Monday podcast here.
Okay, let's get some of our social media commenters in the mix here. And, no, not that one. Let's go here. And this is from Brandon Battle from our Instagram channel talking about Messi. He says he's another old player at the end of his career looking for one last hurrah.
Well, that's been historically, that's a really good point, Brandon. It's been historically one of the problems with MLS, bringing these guys here, whether it was Zoltan, whether it was David Beckham. Guys were coming for a payday so they could party in the States. Messi can still play, as witnessed by what he did last summer in the World Cup. Granted, I think he's 36 years of age. But I still think he's still got goals left in that boot. And I think the fact that this is a marketing marvel, and the fact that this is a consortium way to pay him the finances that he wanted. I mean, if it was just about money, he would have gone to Saudi Arabia for $386 million. Or if it was just about money, maybe he would have gone back to FC Barcelona, though they have salary cap problems. But the marketing thing with him and Adidas and with Apple TV, it's kind of unique. Now, I'm just curious, John, because I like soccer. I'm one of the freaks that gets up at 4:30 in the morning on Saturday so I can watch the English Premier League on my TV because I love that league. But I'm just wondering, does Messi's arrival make a real difference in the perception of MLS soccer on the radar, or is this just a Miami thing, and okay, he's here. Does it really turn on soccer fan here in America?
Yeah, I think in America it does make a difference because Messi, will be coming to San Diego and he's going to be up in LA and he's going to be traveling around America. Does it make MLS a more prestigious league? No. I mean, it's still going to be sort of a minor league relative to the leagues in Europe. But this is nothing but good in trying to bring American soccer to higher and higher levels. And at some point, American soccer is going to be right there with the best in the world.
All right, there's the answer to that soccer question. Thank you for the corner kick from left
Okay.
field. Go ahead.
Here's one from Fat Albert talking about the Dodgers bullpen collapse. He says, looks like Urias is still going to be out and Syndergaard is done.
Well, I feel really bad for Noah Syndergaard because he's done everything humanly possible to get back on the mound. And he does not have his velocity, and he's got mechanical flaws that he just has not been able to overcome. He's making $13 million on a one-year deal. It kind of looks like a bad investment, but if they're sending him to Camelback Ranch, extended spring training, and they're going to try to tear down his mechanics and fix his stride, change his release point, with the idea they can get the velocity back and the control. But his ERA was, when the night they put him on the disabled list last week, his ERA was 7.10. And as hard as he tried, he just has not been able to find any consistency at all. So, and you can't do it during the regular season. You can't make changes in what you're doing between starts when it's supposed to have bullpen days. You can't go in there and change your stride, change your release point, change where your body is situated when you go into your windup. That's a process, repeat process, rinse, soak, dry. You got to do it for days upon days. And in a major league course of the schedule, you don't have time. So that's why he's back in extended spring training. He'll give it another kick at the can. I mean, he was throwing in the mid 90s in spring training. He had 2 or 3 or 4 pretty good outings. He'd only go 1 or 2 innings, but that looked like the Thor that was with the New York Mets.
Yeah.
And this guy has just looked absolutely lost. And he admits he started video. He can see the difference in the video when he had great seasons with the Mets, what he was doing mechanically, and he's just not been able to repeat it. And I don't know whether he's favoring the shoulder, whether he's favoring the elbow now with his delivery and how the release points. But that's what Camelback Ranch and this experience, he's there now. That's what this is going to be about.
It's hard to rebuild your mechanics because it's just the littlest thing. Sometimes it's almost a feeling that they have that allows them to move their hip or their shoulder a certain way. So yeah, that's something that's going to take time. But yeah, talking about Thor when he was with the Mets, I remember DeGrom and the two of them together.
And look what's happened to both of them.
Both of them, the injuries that they just really suffered. I mean, DeGrom has still been great when he's been healthy. But Syndergaard has really suffered. So it's kind of sad to see what happened to them. But geez, being a pitcher in Major League Baseball, some of these guys that are durable, that have long careers, like Greg Maddux. I mean,
like Nolan Ryan.
I mean, how in the heck did those guys do it?
A different era, variety of pitches back then was really different than the violent force snap action throws that we're getting out of these guys now. On we go. A couple more questions here before we wrap up Bonus Monday.
Okay, here's one from Kingsbury. He says, how many hoodies do you have, Hacksaw?
Everything I own has got a logo on it. Some that I bought, some that I was given as gifts, some that I traded stuff for. Hey, if it's clean, I wear it. AKA my alma mater, Ohio University Bobcats. So John's the same way.
Yeah. I mean, you've got a ton of gear. I mean, because like a couple of weeks ago, you rolled in with one of those Seahawks windbreakers. That was pretty cool, from back in your day broadcasting for Seattle. So, yeah, it's part of the fun of sports.
So you're going to become my fashion editor? Is that what you're telling me here, Kingsbury? Thank you for participating in Fans Forum. One more.
Okay, let's go here. This is from Steve Robertson talking about the players' reaction to the merger in golf. The entire sport is now morally bankrupt. In the words of the great Bob Dylan, power and greed and corruptible seed seems to all that there is.
It's probably got a shred of truth to it, but it's sports. We enjoy the events. I guarantee you, global golf is going to be fun to watch. I'm fascinated to see the creative aspect of what they're going to do with the merger with the LIV vis-a-vis Europe. I mean, we do have the British Open, which is significant. And there's such great history in England and Scotland and Ireland to the Open. Goes back to 1853. However, if you plant the PGA flag in another major market, you do it in Paris, you do it with some unique event in Berlin, you do it in Barcelona, you do it in Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it becomes a mega financial event, and it'll be good golf. Now, whether they come up with the idea, we're going to do these special events with LIV working with us in the team concept, and that would be the event that week on the tour. They would go play in Paris, and it's some type of global team competition. I think that'd be kind of interesting. I'm turned off by the team concept. I like medal play. I like the way the tour is right now and what we just saw in Toronto at Glen Abbey in Canada, which was fascinating. But I'm looking to see what the business opportunities, because they'll be putting their flag in lots of new areas. So I'm excited.
I'm excited too, because I think having a global sport, I mean, golf can do this. American football cannot. A lot of other sports cannot do this. Golf can. But yeah, the team concept's kind of weird. It's almost like, remember back in the day, we had team tennis in America, and that didn't really seem to catch on because these are individualized sports. So let's see what develops. But in the end, I agree with you. I think the sport's going to be better off.
I have a tough time, though, putting aside the fact, blood money, sports washing. That really bothers me. It's an American thing. We'll see where it goes. Hey, listen, we hope you've enjoyed our Monday bonus podcast. We cover a lot of topics on the table. We take this thing all over the place. We want you to share. We want you to text, email, tell your friends on whatever social media you use about Hacksaw's Headlines podcast on Thursday and our bonus podcast on Monday. And, of course, about my website, leehacksawhamilton.com. You get a chance, give us a thumbs up. You get a chance. Hey, we have no pride. We'll take a 5-star rating. And by the way, we're trying to push this thing to the 2,000 mark in terms of followers. We're at over 1,900 followers in 8 months. It's your fault. So if you've yet to subscribe, John wants you to do that because he wants to come out of left field, be able to do this with me in the studio more often. Hey, listen, thanks for being with us, John. Have yourself a great sports week. We'll yell at you come Thursday.
Looking forward to it, Lee.
Thanks for being with us on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps. For more content, go to leehacksawhamilton.com.